Hello, I'm Lori Ziegenhagen, a range technician with the USDA Agricultural Research Service and the Eastern Oregon Agricultural Research Center. I will bring you this week's Eastern Oregon Ag Minute. Most range research involves identifying which plants are present on our rangelands and monitoring how these plants respond to different treatments. But what are plant species? How do we identify them? A plant species is a more or less defined group of plants distinguished from all other groups by physical traits and mode of reproduction. In other words, a plant species is a group of plants that look similar in the field and are capable of successfully breeding with one another. Each species is given its own scientific name. However, before a species name becomes official, it must be voted on and accepted by the scientists in the International Botanical Congress that meets every 6 years. Like many of man's attempts to bring order to nature, identifying which exact species of plant you found in the field has its problems. Even the same species of plant may vary in physical appearance from site to site. This is why plant ID books have hundreds and sometimes thousands of pages. Despite the difficulty, having some way to communicate by name which plants are present on our rangelands enables us to monitor and compare one community to another. Yesterday, I defined what a plant species was, a more or less distinct group of plants with its own name. Today, I would like to discuss how plant species are used in describing habitats. You may have heard of species richness and plant diversity. They are not just catchphrases used when talking about the rainforest, but measurements of the number and proportion of the different plant species found within a habitat. Species richness is the total number of species occurring within a given area. A longer list would be richer than a shorter one. Plant diversity is a combination of species richness and how evenly sized the populations of each plant are within that area. A habitat may be rich with 30 different plant species present, but if 98% of the population is from a single species, the habitat is not diverse. Plant diversity and richness are only descriptions to be used with other information to determine the proper functioning of a plant community. Just because a rainforest is richer and more diverse in plant species does not mean it is healthier than a desert or rangeland, only different. Land managers have been using lists of plant species for monitoring and management decisions for decades. Landowners may recognize a few of these methods, such as rangeland condition, rangeland health, or the Parker three-step method. These are standardized systems that were designed to use plant species as a tool to help predict grazing capacity, soil water retention, and the proper functioning of the ecosystem. Some plants, such as blue bunch wheatgrass, are slow-growing perennials and often appear on healthy rangelands. These plants are considered decreasers. They tend to decrease in production as grazing pressure and disturbance increase. Other plant species, such as cheatgrass and invasive annual grass, are classified as increaser species because they increase with disturbance. A rise in production of increasers may indicate a downward trend in rangeland health. By recognizing which plants you have on your property and determining whether they decrease or increase with grazing pressure, you can make predictions on how your rangelands are responding to your current management practices. However, there are many pitfalls in programs that use plant inventories or species richness as the main tool in management decisions. Many plant monitoring programs require returning to a range site and comparing changes in vegetation composition over time. This information can then be used to determine if the current management practices are improving or degrading a rangeland. One pitfall with this approach is that management practices are not the only factors affecting changes in vegetation. As discussed before, each plant species has its own unique physical traits, growth requirements, and reproductive habits. Climatic conditions that favor one plant species may not favor another. Yearly changes in precipitation, springtime temperature, winter snowpack, and other climatic factors cause variability in plant communities. One plant may be abundant one year and absent the next. These drastic year-to-year changes could mask a bad management program or condemn a good grazing regime if plant inventories were not taken over a long period of time. 10-year studies done on relatively untouched sagebrush grasslands in Idaho showed that even relic, unmanaged rangelands experience periods of improvement and decline in range condition due to climatic influences alone. This week I have been discussing plant species. A plant species is a group of plants that look similar in the field and are capable of successfully breeding with each other if the opportunity should arise. Each plant species responds differently to climatic and management changes. By making detailed inventories of what plant species are present and how diverse these populations are, ecologists can make predictions about the health and condition of our rangelands. However, these predictions must be done carefully. Our rangelands change dramatically from site to site and year to year. In order to fully understand the impacts our management has on rangeland condition, we must monitor consistently over long periods of time. Assuming that our treatment caused an increase in production when actuality that year's spring rainfall did, could lead us to make misinformed recommendations. This is why Eastern Oregon Ag Research Center and the USDA Agricultural Research Service places such an emphasis on long-term research. It is important that we understand the influence year-to-year climatic variation has on our sites before we attribute any negative or positive effects to our management practices. This is Lori Ziegenhagen. Thanks for listening to this week's Eastern Oregon Ag Minute.